Cashamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to the 66 Randomize show. This is usually Chris of the Northwest's favorite type of show, but unfortunately, he's out this week for episode 320 of the GeoGearHeads. We've got a couple of great guests to fill in, though. First off, Land Monkey.
Hey, Daryl, thank you so much for inviting me back again. We were talking before the show. I think this is possibly my 20th return back to GeoGearHeads, so I'm hoping to collect the coin soon.
Yeah, we have to have that minted for you, but before we can do that, we got to figure out what that title is officially going to be. The most guestified guest didn't seem to really work too well. And we've also got Rock Chuck joining us.
Hi, Daryl. Nice to be with you and be with Jay. And I don't know how many times I have to come on to earn a coin, but yeah, you know, whatever I have to do, tell me. I'll be happy to do it.
We have to get the coins minted. That's the problem.
Sure. That's always the problem, isn't it? So, yeah.
Well, one of the reasons why you wanted to come on tonight is because we are going to be talking about that donut trail. And,
yes. Anytime there's talk of donuts, I will come running.
I think that's why we're both here. So,
yeah. I think I was under the impression we were going to have donuts, Jay. I don't see Daryl providing any, so I think we may have gotten duped on this deal.
Again.
Right, again.
The bandwidth to send the donuts through. So, you know.
God, he can't mint coins. He can't send donuts. This is empty promises.
Are you done, Chris? Should we just go?
I think that'd be interesting. I'd like to turn this off and see how he does. Probably better than he would with us.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Well, getting back to the donut trail, Rick commented on the YouTube video for 316, which is where Starcasher had sent in the audio about the donut trail and the Geo Tour. And he said that he checked with the donut trail organizers, and they are getting in extra coins to handle the influx of geocachers during Geo Woodstock. So good news. We are going to have coins when we go. And I think all three of us are talking about doing the donut trail right around Geo Woodstock time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a cool coin, and they've got those, you know, T-shirts for the separate deal. So I'm bringing an appetite and some extra luggage space to take some donuts home, and I'm ready. They're gonna get my business for sure.
You can get donuts through airport security, no problem.
Well, I don't think you could get them back to Canada, but yeah, I can get them back to Seattle for sure.
I think if I'm down for enough days, they have you can bring a dozen back.
Just make sure they're not topped with fruit or anything, right? Is that the deal?
If they're topped with fruit, I don't think I'd be eating them anyway. So.
Well, of course not. Yeah, of course not.
But you're going to have that whole time down at Geo Woodstock to eat all those donuts. So I don't think they'll be making it back to the plane.
Well, I hope whatever we end up doing, besides running from donut shop to donut shop at Geo Woodstock, that there's something where we can work off some of those donuts. So we'll have to see what's going on there.
Is Jay suggesting like a treadmill workout? What is he talking about?
I'm not sure. But there is a water park at the Coney Island, but I think after you eat donuts, you probably don't want to go to the water park
for half an hour.
Yeah, that's right. You have to let your donuts settle.
I'm thinking you don't want to go to the water park period after eating donuts.
Okay,
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm willing to chance it personally, but yeah,
the mitigable risk. Yeah,
you might want to ride before me.
Fair enough. All right, we've been
at least two people before. All right, Land Monkey, why don't you read the email that we got from LNN Radio about our USB show?
I will, but you know what? Instead, I'm going to read the one from LNN Railroad. So, just because I like poking fun at Daryl when he says that, because I don't know why you always get their name wrong, but it's
I
fun.
don't know either.
All right, LNN Railroad. Guys, thank you so much for sending this in. They wrote, attached are a couple of photos of a charger doctor. And Daryl, you'll have the link in the show notes, right?
I will.
All right. It's a handy little device that goes between a USB port and a device being powered on that USB port. Has a male and female A connector, and it alternately displays the voltage on the port and the current being drawn through the port. I find the current display very helpful, especially with one device that has a micro USB connector that doesn't charge unless the plug is inserted just right. It's also educational to let you know just how much current your device is actually drawing. So seeing the voltage will let you know if there's a problem with your power source. It's a good point. Possibly preventing damage to devices being charged if the voltage is too high. So they included a couple of photos of the charger doctor. It's a neat little gizmo, and like I said, it's got male and female USB A connectors. And boy, what episode were we talking about USB? Just a few weeks ago.
Oh, that was the connections episode, which I want to say goes back to
It was in January.
Early January.
Yeah, early January. But yeah, that was a good one if you want to learn a little bit more about USB connectors and understand when we say USB A what we're talking about. But anyways, I digress.
Well, I actually have a couple different versions of this type of device. One being for USB A, one for USB C. And of course, I got the USB C one first because of all of the problems with USB C cables blowing up devices. And the USB C meter that I got was one of the first ones out there, actually. But it has the protection to make sure that the cable doesn't blow the device.
Okay, that was going to be my
tell
question.
you if there's a problem.
Right. That was going to be my question.
I got that one.
Oh, sorry. You got that one?
I just got that one mostly to make sure I didn't blow up the phone with a bad cable. And then later I got the USB A version from a different company that helped me troubleshoot what was going on in the car with phones intermittently charging. And we thought it was cables. Turned out it was the charger had gone bad. And if you had more than 2 cables plugged in, not connected to a phone, just plugged in, it just shut down. So it was really bad and went right into the trash.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, good to know that though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they did go on in the email. Says, I have one other comment on the ferrites on USB cables. The discussion was about keeping radio signals out of devices, but the opposite could also be a problem. In a poorly designed device, a USB cable could turn into an antenna to radiate noise coming out of the device. So I think what they're saying is when we were talking about this, Daryl, we were talking about making sure that the cable didn't become a receiving antenna, but they're talking about the cable being a broadcasting or sending antenna as well. So that's another option of using the ferrites on the cable. They said, I suspect that some devices include nice cables so they can get around design flaws and get FCC approval for sale. So there you go.
I'm sure that's definitely the case. And laptops and computers are notoriously noisy. There's all of that junk in there that just spits out all kinds of noise. And one of the things that podcasters learned early on is not to use the internal audio on your computer.
Yeah.
You will get weird noises and timing problems. So, it all goes back to, or I should say most of it goes back to issues with all of that noise that's generated from the computer because it's just not a nice, clean device.
No. Definitely creates a metric buttload of noise, that's for sure.
Yeah. But it has gotten much better, as I understand. I haven't really looked at it in a long time, but as the boards have gotten smaller and more efficient, the amount of noise they generate has gone down. Plus, a lot has been learned with smartphones about minimizing that noise, because in a smartphone, that noise can kill your GPS and or your cellular radio. So it's a big, big deal in a smartphone, and people have learned a lot about that dampening in the electronics.
There you go. All right. Well, switching gears, from electronics to apps. We have Randy of JR and Juju saying, emailing us and saying, "Hi, the app TB Scan is now available for Android devices. I now see why the iPhone users loved it. $299, I would assume that's US, for full features." Randy says, "I have the LG V20 and it works great. I just wish I would have had the app the week before for the Australia event." There you go.
That is very cool. I haven't had a chance to actually get the Android app to work. I had the beta and it didn't work right on my phone. So he did make some fixes. I just haven't had a chance to try it since then. But he did give us 10 of the Pro licenses to give away.
Ooh.
So anyone iOS or Android who's interested, email geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com with the subject TB Scan Pro. And in the body, you have to tell me the exact geocaching nickname and the email address that you want that tied to. So you can send that from any address, but in the body, make sure to give me your geocaching.com screen name. Copy paste would be best so that there's no weird characters or anything in there that don't belong, and the email address that you're using for your logins. And then we'll send you the email. Well, actually, he'll send you an email for the license key. So it is tied. The license keys like that are tied to the username, and they can't be passed on. If you screw it up, it just doesn't work.
That's why you need people to make sure they send that information.
Exactly. So it has to be right. And we're just going to do a random drawing on the 29th. So you have to have those in by, or actually not by the 29th. This is not a leap year. So on March 1st, but get the emails in by the 28th. And then on the 1st, we're going to pick those 10 and send them to him and get you guys the licenses. And another thing to note is the licenses don't, if you purchase a license, it won't transfer from iOS to Android because that's all done in the store, not through his servers or anything like that. So if you buy it on iOS, it's stuck on iOS. If you buy it on Android, it's stuck on Android.
There you go.
It is a cool app. Have either one of you guys played with it at all?
Not I.
Yeah, I've played with it. It's been a little bit, and it worked pretty well for me. I really should, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I was down at the Yuma Mega event last weekend, and I would have been helpful to have used it. I don't have unlimited data, and so I'm really always wondering how much. I've had some data issues lately, not with TB Scan. This is just totally unrelated, but it's caused me to be really probably overly sensitive to how much data. So I'm always looking at the apps that I use and trying to figure out, okay, which one of these is causing me to get close to my data limits. And I was an idiot. It took me a long time to realize that's pretty well spelled out if you look at the right place on your phone. So I've been able to do that. But yeah, so I think one thing I'd be curious about is just how much data you use when you're, like, if you're at a Mega and you discover 50 or 100 TBs. I mean, it could just be, it's minimal. It could just be nothing as far as data goes.
It doesn't really use a lot of data because it is doing the character recognition on the phone. It doesn't send images up to a server or do it and send it back. It does it
gotcha.
on the phone.
Okay.
But if you are connected, it goes and checks what it's finding against the API to make sure it is a valid code, which is one of the handy things about that. So when it does, it's going back and forth, and it does send some text, but it's not like sending images or anything like that.
Right.
So I've got a question for you guys. An app like this, is it just used for discovering TBs, or is it used for actually picking them up and putting them into your inventory as well?
It does do both. However, I wanted to get into the differences between the light version and the pro version. And one of the things I found at the local events is a lot of people will try TB Scan not buy it right away, but get annoyed at some of the limits and just stop using it. So if you have the Pro version, you seem to love it. And I've even talked to a few people who didn't like it, told them, oh, well, that's because you didn't pay for it. They bought it, and then all of a sudden they love it. So it's one of those, I think the light version is actually detrimental to the sale of the licenses. However, it's great because it gives you the chance to give it a shot and make sure it's going to work. You know, especially with Android, you don't know which phones are going to work right and which ones, you know, the camera isn't clear enough or whatever. So I like having that option for the light. But the light version gives you 2 personal log templates. In Pro, there's no limit. In Discover mode, you can only do 5 codes at a time, and then you have to submit and start over, but there's no limit in Pro. And the light version doesn't even do the retrieving or grabbing. Pro does. And there's also a change date mode that's available to the Pro users. Pro, you also have scan images from the photo library, save images to the photo library, select codes to discover, select which codes to discover, and you can export the trackable codes, which is the one I like, because I'll go run around the parking lot at one of these mega events and then send the list of all of those codes to my wife so that she can discover them. And then she just goes in with like Project GC and does the whole thing. So, you know, if you're doing something like that, it's handy to pass along to everyone in your group. And I did one of those where I emailed a bunch of Android users, because this was even before Ron is in the chat room right now, and he said that you know, his Geo Live does this as well, which it does, and there's no charge for his. So if you have Geo Live, you already have the scanning discovery stuff as well. But yeah, this is before he had that. The Android users took that list and went and did it because they really didn't have any other way to do it. He also thought that TV Scan uses a servers, and it does not, because it does work offline now.
There you go. Yeah, I'm looking around my office for a soapbox in my studio here, because this is the reason I was asking this question. I've got a pet peeve, and it's about smartphone users who find a TB in a cache and grab it from your inventory before you have a chance, because you're caching with a GPS. And then you never have a record that you actually dropped that trackable in that cache. So, you know, if you pick up a trackable and it shows that it's in somebody's inventory, why don't you give it like a few days, people, to let somebody have a chance to drop it.
That's something that we've talked about a few times on the show. You know, there's a lag for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't want to do the logging until they're back at home, so that people don't know that they're not at home.
There's all kinds of reasons that people wait a couple of days before they log. So yeah, you know, if you're listening to this podcast, you're a smartphone cacher, good for you. Stop grabbing trackables from people. Give them a couple days to log their caches.
What I always do is try to message, if it's not done at the end of the day, you know, hey, I picked this up, you know, and I want to log it in. If I don't hear anything back, then I will grab it and visit it into the cache so that it at least gets dipped in for the mileage.
Yeah, which is pretty much what we do as well. But, you know, I'd like to not have to grab them back from people. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, which then it's not in their inventory, and they're going to wonder why they can't drop it into the cache that they want to drop it into.
It's like magic.
Yeah. Let's move on to Tick Magnet's email, who wants shirts from GeoGearHeads.
Who does?
This is something that we've talked about, but never did anything about it. So I've done a little poking around, and right now I'm really only finding Cafe Press and Redbubble as recommended options. So if you know anyone about who does a good on-demand service that's at least doing US and Canada, let me know. Also, cautionary tales, if you've used one of these services and had problems, I'd like to know that. And the last time I've done anything with this kind of stuff, it was through Cafe Press more than a decade ago. That was back for the old Michigan Cycling podcast. So, it was a long time ago. And I've got some photos up on Redbubble. They're still selling. I'm still getting some revenue from that one. But I've never used them for the t-shirts, and it kind of worries me since they're more of a photo service. Sometimes the photo stuff doesn't last as well and look as good. Right. So, any input would be helpful, because it would be very nice to have those t-shirts, especially before things like Geo Woodstock.
Well, listeners will be happy to know that Daryl and I were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, because us at Caching in the Northwest have been looking into it as well. So we've done a little bit of research. We're sharing what we've learned with Daryl. So maybe there will be GeoGearhead t-shirts for sale soon. Maybe.
I'm hoping, because at least I want one too.
So patrons, buy Daryl a t-shirt for his own podcast.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Okay. Well, LNN Radio does have another email.
You did it.
So I'm going to let you. Did I? I thought he said it right. LNN Radio. I do radio. Oh. You know why?
Chris, are you enjoying yourself as much as I am?
This is awesome. Yeah.
Oh, great. This one is actually a Radio 1, and I've been thinking about it all day.
Hey, Chris, did you want to take it? You want to read this one?
Yeah, let me get caught up here. Let's see here. It's about ARRL International Grid Chase 2018.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, this operating activity in 2018 might be of interest because of its use of grid squares. If one digs into the settings, a lot of GPS will give location in Maidenhead grid squares instead of latitude, longitude, or UTM. For amateur radio use, the grid squares are usually just 2 letters and 2 numbers, but the coordinate system actually supports finer detail by adding additional alternating pairs of letters and numbers. That might even make for an interesting puzzle cache. Give the cache location in Maidenhead coordinates without explanation, and cachers would have to first figure out what is going on and then how to convert into something they're used to, or just switch their GPS to that for the find.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's pretty cool. I had never heard of this before, and so I followed the link that that LNN Railroad sent in and checked it out. And that's kind of cool. I didn't even know that system existed.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different coordinate systems out there, and too many to even remember most of them. The only ones I can remember are the. I can't even remember what we're using as the default, but because UTM is the other one. It's WGS84, I think, that we're using now. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, which is up for an update, I think, next year. Don't remember off the top of my head. I should have looked that up. But in any case, it's a bunch of different chord systems out there. It's just which ones do you want to use, and they're not all like linear translations. So it can be a good puzzle source. And I haven't done any of them based on that, but I have seen them where they were. Tick Magnet says, by the way, that the caching in the Northwest shirts are pretty cool.
Thank you, Tick Magnet. We think they
haven't been through the dryer yet.
Hey, listen, you.
Well, if they were through the dryer, they'd be warm, not cool.
Okay. Thought you were making some sort of quality comment there.
No.
That's how I interpreted it.
I guess we're just a little more defensive tonight.
Sorry. Alternatively, I could just have gone with, it's kind of cool out in the Northwest right now.
Well, it is. Kind of cool.
Yeah. Hey, you guys are still warmer, I think, than we are.
Usually, yeah.
I think that's usually the case, yeah.
Today, I think it's like 40 something degrees.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that sounds really hot to me, but
Well, yeah, not Celsius, Fahrenheit.
all right.
You
What?
want to kill us with our 100-degree days that we get out here. All right, so Wet Coaster emailed, have you heard about this? It's new to me. Virtual caches with virtual travel bugs. The Discover codes are on the TB listing, and he gave us one to take a look at. There are others in Prague that have virtual TBs. Work is sending him there for a week and he's going to go do some of those. But I have seen some of this, especially with the travel bugs that go missing, where they'll start offering them up to move around virtually, and you'll find them in virtuals and in Earth caches.
That's a new one on me.
Yeah, and it's not common, but it does happen more often now. I see the codes just being turned into Discover codes and shared on Facebook and Twitter and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, when I saw that note from Wet Coaster, I went and looked at the cache because my first thought was, oh, is this one of the new virtual reward caches and one of the Mary Hyde virtual TB codes combined? And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, but it's not. This is like one of the old virtuals from 2002. So yeah, it's a new one on me. I don't know. Don't really have an opinion either way. It's interesting. I love virtuals.
Yeah, the weird thing is you can't actually put a travel bug into the virtual caches, but there's no limit disallowing it. So people have always been dropping trackables into the caches to visit mileage and that kind of thing. And I've been talking with a couple of the developers of the apps on and off, and they're really perplexed when you start talking about doing that, because it's just not a behavior that they actually think about. And when they do, they start building it in because it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Well, I see there's 5 trackables in the inventory for this virtual cache. And so I guess, yeah, obviously, because you don't have the code, you can't retrieve them from the cache. So it's, the CO.
Well, no, the codes, what he's talking about is the codes are actually on the page. They actually put the code on there so that you can go and grab it and move it to a different virtual or Earth cache or whatever. Oh, yeah. But here's the problem I see with this is I worry that someone's going to try to drop that into a cache that has a physical container, and then you're going to get the logs on it saying, oh, the cache is missing, or that the trackable is missing from the cache.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I don't know that I would bother doing it.
Well, it was kind of a cool thing, especially for those who loved virtuals. And there was a summer where I went and did like 50 or 60 virtuals, because it was right after virtuals had been grandfathered and we were afraid they were going to start going away. And some of them have. So we were out there trying to hit everyone we could. And for that, it kind of would have been fun to do that, to go and track down some of these old TBs that have gone missing. Got hundreds of those among all the accounts that I have. Just they're not there anymore. However, I have had some of those come back after like 5-10 years. So I also worry about that. If there's a trackable that goes missing and suddenly it reappears, now you've got the physical trackable running around and this virtual one that's going to get moved. And again, someone's going to grab it. And, it's kind of the joke too about the vehicle trackables. Someone took my car.
Right. Yeah.
Chris, are you into the trackables that much or no?
I mean, define into. I mean, yeah. I mean, I definitely, I discover whenever I see one. I tend to, when I'm out and about and I find one in a cache, if it has it spelled out there, like on a little card or something, telling you what its goal is or what it wants to do, then I'm a little more likely to take the time to maybe retrieve it and try to get it where it's going. So much of the time, though, I'm out somewhere without data or whatever, I'm off the grid, and I just don't want to take it and then realize that, oh darn, I'm not going where it needs to go. So I find myself doing a lot more discovering than I do retrieving and then trying to deliver it somewhere, unless I'm for sure, like I said, that I can get it kind of where it wants to go, which I feel kind of guilty about, because I feel like, that's really the point, is more to move them than just to discover them. At least that's my own personal feeling. That's not necessarily, the way everybody should feel. But so I find myself feeling a little guilty that I don't move them a little more often than I do. And the other thing is, I also, if I do pick one up, I find myself then feeling this huge responsibility to find the exactly right place to drop it. Especially if it's like, for instance, I came upon a Jeep trackable a couple years ago. I was in Utah, and I happened to visit a cache the day after this Jeep trackable had been dropped in this cache, and I thought, gosh, I feel like I need to find the right place for this. I can't just put it, in some high muggle place or whatever. And so I end up with way more trackables in my inventory than I really want. I may have 5 or 6, and just trying to figure out the right place to put them. And in fact, that happened to me when I was in Arizona. I ended up with like 4 or 5 of them that I had brought from Washington, and I finally found a really nice well, it wasn't a hotel, but a big container outside somebody's house that was locked and all that stuff. So I thought, okay, I'm okay with putting them here, but there's a lot of emotional baggage that I'm carrying when it comes to trackables.
Understandable, especially with this. Yeah, especially with the way that these trackables tend to go missing. It is kind of rough. You never want to be that person who dropped it and it was never seen again.
Right, exactly.
That's happened to us before.
Yeah, more times than I can even count. But I tend not to move them much anymore, because I'll sit on them for months until I get to the next event, because I'm not finding enough containers that are big enough to fit the trackables anymore. Even like a coin is really tough to find a container that fits it. And
does anybody put coins out anymore, though? I mean,
yeah, I was gonna say the coins rarely survive anymore, so you're not seeing many of those in the wild to move to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of them, as you would imagine, at HQ in the cache in our lobby, and yeah, so sometimes I'll go out there and I might discover them or what have you. But I'm sometimes kind of amazed by some of the, if there's a nice coin or something like that shows up in the cache. And I think that's good. The first time I visited HQ, well before I ever worked there, I bought a patch there in the, you can buy stuff there in the visitor center, and I bought this trackable patch, and I activated it and gave it a mission and dropped it there in the HQ cache. It never even made it out of the HQ cache. It went missing before it never even moved. And that was my very first experience with a trackable.
And it was in the cache that's guarded at HQ.
Yes, it never made it out of there. I don't know what happened to it, but
yeah. So somebody was visiting, picked it up, and who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, who knows? It may have. But it's funny. I had one, gosh, I guess it was just this last week. I'll have to look up which one it was, but I got this dropped off log, and it was the person had actually marked it as missing like a year ago, and they logged it again and said, so sorry, I ended up finding it, the trackable stuck between my car seats or whatever, all moving on here real soon. So like Daryl said, and it definitely, sometimes they can be resurrected from the dead.
Well, and sometimes they just end up having weird stuff happen. I had a trackable up here that I thought it'd be really funny that I was going to send it from up here in BC where I live, and send it down to Tacoma for my co-host partners. And just see if it could make it that short distance down the coast. And it made it to HQ. And from HQ, it went to Czechoslovakia, where it is currently moving around in the Czech Republic. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
we've released between the show and my ex-caching partner somewhere around, I think it was 1,000 trackables,
Holy
mostly
cow.
coins. And so, between all of those, we had a good feel. What I found was if I released a bunch of coins, and for a year or two, every cache we visited got a coin, one of our personal coins, either the like full size regular coin, or we had little mini coins that would fit into micro containers, including mine was a little film roll. So I had the film rolls to go into the 35 millimeter film containers that were everywhere at that point. I thought that was kind of fun since I was a photographer, and put some film back into the film containers. But every one of those was named, launched, and then the cache that we dropped it in, and we'd just like to see where they traveled. We lost a lot of them, and a lot of them, after we marked them missing and everything, would come back. Hey, I was cleaning out my car before I sold it. I want to say in 2 years, I had at least a dozen of those. And
Wow.
I always laugh at them. I totally understand, especially with those little tiny ones, it gets dropped in the car somewhere and just disappears. So
Sure.
yeah, it happens. But then you'll also get the stories about, hey, my mom grabbed this and then got sick, and we were just cleaning out her affairs and discovered it. Can we send it back to you?
Hmm.
So you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Someone was telling me, and I don't remember who it was. They had sent some really nasty emails. Hey, you picked my trackable up. You've had it for 6 months. Please get it moving. Getting really nasty about it in the emails because they weren't hearing anything back. And then they got the email from someone else that said, "Hey, I found this in someone's belongings." It's like, oh man. And I had someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone I knew at the ape event had all of the coins stolen out of their car.
Oh.
The first ape event.
Oh.
So they had no idea where any of them went. They just went and marked everything that was in their inventory as I think they had to email them and say, hey, the coins were stolen. I have no idea where they are. Hopefully they'll show up. But, my rental car was broken into and everything was gone, including all the coins.
That's
Mm.
And one of the stories was, hey, I picked up this box of things at the thrift shop and these were in here. I didn't know what they were. And it turns out they belong to you. Can I, send them back? Okay. That's where they went. They ended up in a thrift shop.
weird.
Out of curiosity, how much did you pay for that?
Yeah.
I got kind of excited. When I was at the Yuma event last weekend, as I was walking into the event, I got an email, a notification that one of my coins had been dropped off at the Yuma event, and I haven't seen this coin in I set it out a few years ago, and I thought, oh, that might be kind of cool but it would have been so hard to find it. I just said, no. Have you ever had that happen where you've found that one of your trackables ends up close to you somehow, like in a cache or whatever, and you're able to see it again? That really hasn't happened to me much, which is surprising given how many I have out there.
Yeah, I've had a few of those. Not as many as I would like. One of them that I released early on was a little digital recorder, and it
Oh.
was called the Oral History Travel Bug. And that one I was actually able to catch up with. And unfortunately, there was only like one story on it, so that's all I got out of it. Released it, and it went away. Of course, I knew that was going to be a long shot, but that was way back when I started caching too, in like 2005 ish,
Mm.
something like that. So at that point, you didn't see the travel bugs disappearing as quickly. But being that it's electronic, it's just kind of risky to put something like that out there, period.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure you've talked about this 100 times on the show, but it is amazing how the movements can vary, based on country. And when you get out to you guys have probably had this happen where you get one of your trackables ends up in Germany, and I've got them moving around there like crazy. I mean, it's amazing that it's just regular, somebody drops it off, somebody else picks it up, they go around some more. I mean, it seems to be a lot more safe is the right word. I mean, to have one moving around there than it is maybe in the United States.
Well, that had been the case for me until about 3 years ago, and until that point, up until 3 years ago, it used to be that the coins would go to Germany and they'd never leave, but they were constantly moving around Germany. Then about 3 years ago, I started getting fewer logs for movement and more logs of discovery. And there's a bunch of the coins that have ended up on lists in Germany, and they keep getting German discoveries, even though the coins have been marked missing long ago.
Oh,
Caches
okay.
that are stolen and whatever. So I don't think I have more than like 1 or 2 coins still moving over there, even though there's probably 200-300 coins that are in Germany technically.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of those coins are missing, and I'm getting discoveries on at least 20 or 30 of those that are gone. So it's kind of changed. I'm not getting the constant movement anymore with those coins. But again, these are coins that are nearly a decade old. They've been out there for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, and I still have some of them moving. I've got one I was just looking at the other day that was released in, I want to say 2008, that's still moving and had over 70,000 miles on it. Now I'm curious. I'll have to go and look that up again.
Wow.
You know what? It's probably more than that, being that old, moving that much. But I loved for years watching the things travel. And then when you get that many moving, it just got to the point where I can't even pay attention to this anymore. It's just too much.
Well, it's funny when you talking about distance, it made me think, I should look and see what my longest distance traveled is, and 97,000 miles.
Whoa.
And it's still out there. It's one of the deadly duck tags from a few years ago, but I need to look and see. It looks like somebody's had it in their possession for a while, and they've been just kind of, well, let's see here. No, not that long. Somebody picked it up in January, and they've only had it since January. So, yeah, that's kind of surprising. Was it going? See, I don't do it. Do you guys? I do a terrible job of keeping up with my trackables, because I'm looking at this one, and it was at going caching last year, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. But I didn't know that. I'm sure I got a notification, and I didn't bother. I didn't bother reading it.
I used to get so many that I stopped doing anything with it. But since more and more of them have disappeared, there's fewer of them moving. And anytime I see a dropped or moved log, I'll actually take a look at it. I tend not to look at the visits, but the one that I was talking about was May of 2007. So it's been almost 11 years in the wild. It is still moving, and it has where did it go? I just lost it. It was 90,000 something miles on it. 97,678 miles. And it was just logged on the 11th. So it is still out there, still moving around. It's in someone's hands right now, who seems to be dipping it. And if anyone wants to look that up, it is TB1E55Z.
Yeah, and the other thing I wish I would do, I used to do this a lot more early on, is whenever I would pick one up, or if I'd be carrying it around, I would try to take pictures, and upload them to the cache page, because I love it when people do that on mine. And I haven't been doing that as much anymore either. It's I'm just lazy, I guess. But as I'm just sitting here clicking through a few of mine, just kind of looking at the galleries, and again, I don't know. I kind of wish that maybe there was a note. Maybe you get it. It'd be cool if you got a notification saying that somebody uploaded an image of your, with one of their logs of one of your trackables. I think that might be a cool feature.
Yeah.
Gee, if only someone worked over there that could.
Yeah, I need to follow.
Let the developers know.
I'll write a letter, to somebody. I'll write a sternly worded letter.
I was thinking a pleading letter, but sternly worded can work too.
Yeah, I'll drop it on the right. It'll be anonymous. I'll just drop it on. I know the desk to drop it on too. So
as long as you have unrecognizable handwriting, just cut the letters out of a newspaper.
Exactly.
There was a time at which it was really a big cool thing to do the photos with the travel bugs. I think that was mostly before cell phones, because now that cell phones are so prevalent, or smartphones rather, are so prevalent, it's easy to take those photos and post them. When it was more challenging, it was a bigger deal, and there was that reward that hey, I've taken this cool photo and posted it. And there were a bunch of travel bugs that were explicitly traveling to get photos of like stadiums was one of the ones I did. There was another one that wanted signs, schools, wanted its photo at the sign for a school. So there's all of these different cool missions, and it was really a lot of fun to get those and see where they've been, add your own photos to it. But they've kind of gone away, and some of that I think is because it's so easy to do with a smartphone now that you don't have the reward. The other thing though, people don't really seem to be paying attention to the missions for the trackables. They just pick them up and move them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guilty of that too when I do the discoveries. You get the handful of trackables that are dropped at the table at the event for people to discover while they're there, and I just go with TV scan them all, and do my quick discovery log. And I'm kind of rethinking that a little bit since I went to the event 2 days ago and got an email message on the message center from the bug owner. Hey, can you post a photo? No, I didn't get a picture of that one, and I don't even remember what that one is, to be honest. So I'm feeling a little guilty about doing the discoveries now.
Yeah, it used to be. Well, and it's been a while since I set one out, but I always try to put a little laminated piece of paper in there with the mission or whatever. But those always generally get separated, I find. Even if I put them in a plastic bag or whatever, they'll get lost. So
I actually found when we were doing the tags that if you didn't put it in the plastic bag, it lasted longer than if you did. For some reason, the plastic bags, I think, because what would happen, especially out here, is people are caching with the moisture and everything. So it would start to, it just holds it all in, and the laminated tags start coming apart, and it just didn't work well. So with the coins, what I would do is, how you get that little vinyl folder with the pockets. One side would have the mission and the description just on a piece of Write in the Rain paper, and the other one would have the coin, of course. That worked for a little while, but all too often, just in jostling around in the cache, those would break and it falls apart. But for coins, short of drilling a hole and attaching it, there's really nothing good that I know of to keep them all together. Yeah. Which is also part of why you're seeing so many proxies out there now.
True. All right. Oh, hey.
Hey. Tick Magnet wants to know if your shirt is trackable, Chris.
Yes, it is. How about I email Tick Magnet with the code?
Sounds like a good play. Or just use the message center.
Or I can do that.
There you go.
Yes. Tick Magnet saw it.
My
I will
favorite-
shoot him a message.
My favorite feature of the official app, and really, to be honest, the only one I actually use is the message center. Though for some reason,
integrated.
for some reason, I'm getting 2 push notifications for every message that comes in now, and it's only since I moved to my new phone. So something got screwed up when I moved to the new phone.
Yeah, I think it's you, not the app.
No, I'm sure it's something that happened. It's the only app that's doing that, but when you move phones and when you do the copy migration stuff, there's always something that goes wrong, and that seems to be the thing that went wrong this time. I've had those situations where I have to move phones and like notifications never work again until I delete the app and reinstall. So I'm sure it's something like that. I'm not sure if deleting the app is going to be my next move or what, but it's on those list of when I have time to play with my phone. I'm going to try to figure this out. All right. Well, guys, thanks so much for hanging in there. I've got a couple more things that we were going to do, but we've got to move on and do our patron show. Can you guys stick around for the patron show, or do you got to take off?
I can hang around for it.
Yeah, I can stick for a few minutes.
All right. Awesome. So, hey, we'll jump into the patron show right after this. Give us some time to reset, and patrons look for that link coming up. But thanks so much, guys, for joining us. Before we go, Land Monkey, you want to read out the schedule of the upcoming shows?
I really, really do. So, folks, if you've enjoyed this little bit of time with Chris and Daryl and myself, there's even more coming. You know what? February 22nd, GeoGearHeads 321, Mega and Giga events too, with Heather Feather from geocaching.com. All right. March 1st, GeoGearHeads 322. That's going to be all about Geo Woodstock 2018. And it looks like it's featuring some of the board members. So nice job, Daryl. March 8th is GeoGearHeads 323, and that's going to be Our Gear Episode 3. That's going to have Shermanator, See My Shell, and I believe Land Monkey might even be on there because, it's probably been a few weeks and I'll be missing Daryl and need to talk to him again. All right. March 15th is episode 324, and that is another Randomize LXVI. So there you go.
So check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Christoph Nauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2018 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cachemaniacs.